Hello, I'm Jim Castellan, an independent scholar. I thank my co-author Cooper for arranging the meeting with Beverly Brannon, head of the Prints and Photographs Department in the Library of Congress, at which I learned this is what I am. It was one of the most efficient and mutually beneficial meetings I've had the pleasure of experiencing. Cooper arranged the meeting because he knew I had searched and probably viewed online more Durborough material than anyone else. In less than an hour, I was able to document nearly all of the P&P's Newspaper Enterprise Association's copyrighted photograph collection of the early 1900s Mexican troubles as being taken by Wilbur H. Durborough. In turn, Beverly played intermediary for me with the manuscripts department, resulting in the library's acquisition of Wilbur H. Durborough's manuscript, thanks to the generosity of the Durborough family. I thought it ironic in that it only took me so little time because I could use the Prints and Photographs public PCs to access the Library of Congress's very own Chronicling America online searchable U.S. newspaper collection to quickly provide the documentation requested. It is a fine example of the effective use of searchable online historical material, the topic we were requested to present on today. But I also want to note I didn't say I was a film media scholar. When I retired from applying bits, bytes, and bauds to corporate pharmaceutical business applications, I wanted to put that behind me and follow my bliss. I'd always squeezed in reading some history and biography, and I decided to attempt something I'd never done, writing a modest book on Oswald F. Schuete's World War I correspondence and experiences covering the Central Powers from Berlin for the Chicago Daily News. By 2001, some newspapers of record like ProQuest's offering of the New York Times, Washington Post, and a handful of other major city papers in the U.S. were online but only affordable and available to major libraries, not an independent scholar. Unfortunately, the Chicago Tribune was the paper it offered for Chicago. My closest access to the Chicago Daily News was on microfilms at the Library of Congress. So starting in April of 2001, my routine for the better part of 2 years was to travel from my home in Rose Valley to the Library of Congress every 2 to 4 weeks and spend 3 days capturing paper copies of Schuete's bylines from the microfilms. I'd awake at 4:30 in the morning, leave by 5:30, drive about 3 hours to Capitol Hill, park and walk several blocks to the Library of Congress's Madison building with the newspaper materials, just as it opened at 8:30 for the public. Then, for both Thursday, Friday, and Saturday until about 5 p.m., with only a short midday lunch break, I'd find and print Schuete's articles, physically enduring the abuse of legs cramped up against the printer, my back hunched over to view the screen, and always strained glazed-over eyes by the day's end, spending about $50 to $60 in copy charges. It wasn't long before I found a Daily News October 1915 article, not by Schuete, but about a Wilbur H. Durborough. He had just returned from Germany, and he praised Schuete as important for his success in getting real war pictures for his film. I thought it would be interesting to view this film to see just what Durborough and Schuete had experienced covering the war on the East Front. I speculated his film may even have included Schuete, given their apparent close relationship. So as I continued my trips to Washington as my primary task, I began searching in the background for Durborough's film. So in the spring of 2001, I began searching in the background for Durborough's film. PCs and the Internet had evolved greatly since the 1980s, when I paid $3,500 for my first IBM PC and used a 300 baud modem to access the Internet, which then was the largest collection of uncatalogued information in the world. My online search could now start with a step 0, thanks to Google. Wilbur H. Durborough quickly found only 2 relevant items. The key one for me was the Internet Movie Database. It provided a record of his film which included only 3 facts: that a Wilbur H. Durborough had made a film on the firing line with the Germans in 1915. Unlike other films, it didn't provide an option to click on the purchase of either a VHS or a DVD of the movie. With a name like Durborough, I then searched the online phone directory, and my first call connected with the family. They didn't know anything about Wilbur Durborough's traveling to Europe or making a film. I shared what I had learned with the family and continued my search. Since Durborough and Schutte were both Chicagoans, I looked for a war film correspondence course at the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. I found one given by Professor Larry Lichty. His email response to my inquiry noted there really wasn't any film material much before World War II, but he suggested I contact McDonald Associates, a Chicago film sourcing company. McDonald Associates had no knowledge about the Durborough film. When their posts to the Association of Moving Image Archivists listserv produced no results, it was suggested I contact the Moving Images reference librarian at the Library of Congress. It was August when I contacted the helpful reference librarian, who found the American Film Institute's more complete description of the Durborough film. When I asked about knowledge of where I might find any of this Durborough film, it was suggested I check the National Archives and Record Administration, abbreviated as NARA, as it appeared to be of historic value, and they might have collected it. NARA's catalog listed 13 reels of 1915 Durborough German war film, 7 reels and 6 miscellaneous reels. Knowing from contemporary newspaper research and the AFI catalog film description, the film I was looking for was 8 or 9 reels. I wasn't sure it was the film I was seeking. I was so illiterate with regards to film processing, I couldn't even figure out how to fill out the online forms to request a copy. Moreover, that confusion, along with the time and expense it would take, the large risk it wasn't even the right film, as well as I had no way to personally view 35mm film, all gave me pause. I noticed the catalog description had a ref.vid notation at the bottom, which I confirmed indicated a reference video was available for viewing at their College Park location. In early October of 2001, I was at College Park to confirm it was indeed from the film I was seeking. But it had no film of the Kaiser or his family noted in contemporary newspaper descriptions, and the 7 reels totaled a little over 5,000 feet, much less than the 8,000 or 8,500 feet mentioned in 1915 ads. I want to share the only original Wilbur H. Durborough item found by Google in my original 2001 search. It was this photo he had taken of General Pancho Villa heading out to a battle that had been posted online by the Prints and Photographs Department at the Library of Congress. I'll shamelessly digress now to note my article in this April's issue of the Journal of Film Preservation. It documents the unique circumstances over the past century and some of the key people, institutions, and events that is enabling the Library of Congress's project now underway to reconstruct this lost Durborough film, which hasn't been viewed since the U.S. declared war with Germany in April 1917. The last hurdles to determine the film's detailed content and locate the important missing film segments were only made possible by the unique collaboration we, co-authors Cooper, Ron, and I, created, with each of us making key contributions. With the World War I centennial, many film historians, and possibly some of you, have been looking over archival World War I film. If you think you've seen any of these next 4 images, we'd very much like to hear from you. This first one is Durborough getting his assignment from his NEA editor Sam Hughes in Chicago. The next is the badly damaged film of a torpedo boat on patrol in the English Channel on Durborough's trip over to Europe. This one was Durborough and his cameraman Reese about to leave Berlin for the East Front. And this last one is the Red Cross boats on the River Vistula that Durborough filmed on the way to the East Front. If you've seen any of these, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks. I now want to touch briefly on using online surrogate sources to answer questions about the Durborough film, since I was unsuccessful in my search to find any original business records. The group of investors that Durborough persuaded to finance his independent film initiative was called the War Film Syndicate. They rented an office in the Mahlers building in Chicago for 2 years, as noted in the 1916 and 1917 Chicago directories. This is an example of the few ads offering the film's state distribution rights of an 8,500-foot film. The ads indicate it was an unincorporated private partnership. They appeared a couple of times early in 1916 in a few major film trade journals. The last film showings found so far in the newspapers was in March 1917, consistent with our February break in diplomatic relations with Germany and the U.S. declaration of war shortly thereafter on April 6, 1917. I sought to answer two questions. The first was, did papers join as a sponsor for the film project before Durborough's trip to Germany, or only subscribe after the finished film was available? There are many ads for local film showings, many fewer articles about the film's contents, but very few articles that mentioned any financial arrangements. However, after viewing a large number of newspaper film ads and articles, I found one that explicitly stated it clearly. The small Waterloo, Iowa Times-Tribune article of June 20, 1916 wrote, "The Times-Tribune makes this announcement as a matter of keen news interest to its readers. The announcement is possible because of an arrangement made several months ago by which the Times-Tribune and its sister papers united to send W.H. Durborough, notice the misspelling, to Europe. Mr. Durborough, thank goodness it spelled it correctly this time, has now brought back, again a misspelling in brought, the most remarkable war film seen in this country." In looking at many film ads and articles via searchable online newspaper collections, I had noticed most Iowa ads mentioned 8,000-foot versions, and included the statement, "Pictures taken by Wilbur H. Durborough in conjunction with Oswald F. Schutte, the Chicago Daily News correspondent with the German Army." So I did a quick analysis using just the online newspapers available at the World Vital Records website. I searched all Iowa 1916 newspapers for Durborough. One paper, the Atlantic News Telegraph, had an article about presenting Durborough's 8,500-foot film, taken expressly for the Associated Papers, and noting it had earlier printed Durborough's World War I photos, a clear indication that it was a Newspaper Enterprise Association subscriber. So while the NEA turned down Durborough's film project, as our book documents, it apparently let the War Film Syndicate solicit its members to individually decide to directly subscribe to this independent film project prior to his trip to Germany, and they showed the 8,500-foot film advertised by the War Film Syndicate. Another 6 Iowa papers all advertised an 8,000-foot film version and included the identical statement, "Pictures taken by Wilbur H. Durborough in conjunction with Oswald F. Schutte, the Chicago Daily News correspondent with the German Army." Victor Lawson, owner-editor of the Chicago Daily News, had sponsored the first film showing in Chicago for 3 weeks, and had always advertised an 8,000-foot version of the film. The War Film Syndicate had then continued showing the film in Chicago always advertised as 8,500 feet. So it appears clear that Lawson acquired Iowa film distribution rights and showed the Chicago Daily News' 8,000-foot film version. I noticed similar language used in a Minnesota and an Illinois ad, so he also appears to have acquired other Midwest states' film distribution rights. The last example I want to present was the challenge concerning the Durborough film censorship by the Pennsylvania State Board of Censors. One now doesn't need to visit NARA in College Park to view the cataloged Durborough film. Shortly after I connected with my co-authors, Cooper and Ron, thanks to Cooper's 2010 film history article about Durborough and his film, Ron found this Durborough Narrow film online at www.criticalpast.com, the online presence for a film sourcing company. I snipped this seal from this site at the start of NARA's Reel 1. Both Cooper and I had independently checked Pennsylvania State Archives and found the State Board of Censors records were missing for this period. Without any hint as to which location's film showing experienced the Board of Censors film review, it would have been virtually impossible to find it without the ability to efficiently search a wide selection of states' newspapers for 1916 and 1917. When I searched just the Pennsylvania newspapers at Chronicling America for the words Durborough and censor, I found several articles about this event in the Philadelphia Evening Ledger. The scheduled film to be shown in February at the Chestnut Street Opera House in Philadelphia had to remove 75 feet of film of the portraits of Hindenburg and the Kaiser near the very end of the last reel. They feared the portraits might incite a theater riot between English and German sympathizers. Incredibly, the censors even confiscated the movie posters with their portraits that were to be used and posted around the city to advertise the showing. They claimed the posters were false advertising because they implied Hindenburg and the Kaiser would be appearing in person. Our book documents the conclusions of this interesting film censorship story, includes many others from other online contemporary records that augmented the usual research visits to archives. I hope my small examples indicate the online capabilities now available to all media scholars to search quickly and widely for the detailed contemporary film journals and newspapers that can replace missing original records to answer important questions, using sources that were not available until just recently, with additional relevant material coming online daily. I'll now pass the baton to Ron Van Dopperen and his extensive research into the interesting World War I cinematographer, Albert K. Dawson.